TrendStorm.
Welcome back to TrendStorm. Now let's take a look at the political changes in Pakistan. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was disqualified last week on corruption charges stemming from the 2015 Panama Papers scandal, shaking up the political situation in the nuclear-armed pivot state of South Asia. The judiciary reached a unanimous decision in what has become one of the most unprecedented and controversial cases in the country's history, with advocates arguing that it did the right thing, since the courts proved that every Pakistani is equally accountable under the law, while opponents alleged that it was an arbitrary move that was more about carrying out a soft regime change than anything else. The fact of the matter is that there wouldn't have even been a case to begin with had it not been for the corruption revelations disclosed in the Panama Papers leak from approximately 2 years ago, as it was the information contained in these files which was used to pursue the claim that the Prime Minister and his family were engaged in illegal activities. It's here where both sides begin to diverge with their differing interpretations over what came next. Sharif supporters speculated that hostile elements of the Pakistani deep state, particularly those in the military, secretly wanted to oust the elected prime minister and were using the anti-corruption court proceedings against him as their publicly plausible vehicle for doing so. For these reasons, they consider Sharif's disqualification as a sort of military coup, in spite of the civilian government still remaining in place. The other camp of Pakistanis refute this explanation of events and insist that the courts were acting independently the entire time, which is something that the country and its citizenry should feel immensely proud of because of what it says about the maturing state of Pakistani democracy. Instead of condemning this as a coup, they celebrate it as justice finally being served to a corrupt politician. This is an interesting affair to follow in its own right, but it takes on regional and even global implications when one considers that Pakistan is a nuclear-armed Chinese ally at regular odds with India, and that developments in this country could affect the stability of the over 1 billion people living in this subcontinent. Now we're going to switch over and speak to Mr. Shahid Raza. He's a geopolitical analyst currently serving as the director of the Geopolitical Research Project Command 11 Consulting in Islamabad.
TrendStorm.
Okay, Shahid, how do you think Sharif's disqualification will affect Pakistan's relations with India and the U.S., and are there any immediate geopolitical implications to this development?
Hi, Andrew. First of all, thank you for having me on your show again. Look, in my assessment, there are going to be no significant changes in relations with India and the United States. However, I would like to say that former Prime Minister was quite close to both India and the U.S. As far as geopolitical implications are concerned, I do not believe that there will be any departure from Pakistan's existing geopolitical posture on issues like terrorism, trade, CPAC, security, engagement with Russia, Kashmir, and Afghanistan.
Okay, yeah, I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit more about the CPAC vector of all this, because some of Sharif's supporters say that CPAC might suffer now that he's out of office. But what's your response to these claims then?
Look, I do not believe that these statements are true, and I don't belong to that particular school of thought, which assumes that a strategically pivotal geopolitical project like CPAC will suffer from the departure of former Prime Minister Sharif. Because you understand it as well as I do, that such projects are long-term state-to-state projects, and they are protected from any political changes to occur in the future in the stakeholding countries. The CPAC project is a critical arm of the multipolar geopolitical blueprint currently being followed by China, Pakistan, and importantly, Russia, to bring balance and stability in our region. The Pakistani intelligentsia understands this very well, and I believe that CPAC project will be pursued with the same vigor as before the ouster of Sharif, because there is a complete consensus on the political and security establishment in Pakistan on this particular project. So I do not think that there will be any kind of, quote-unquote, suffering for the CPAC project just because the Prime Minister is out. One thing that I would like to mention is that, yes, the Prime Minister is out, but the same party is still in power. They've only changed the Prime Minister. Everything else is exactly in the same place.
Yeah, you mentioned this political continuity in terms of the Prime Minister's party, and this makes me want to ask you about your forecast in terms of who you see succeeding Sharif as the next Prime Minister of Pakistan. And are there any major changes that you predict that this individual might make to their predecessor's foreign policies?
Okay, let me just explain how the succession process is going at this point in time. There is a two-tier process. There is an interim government in place for 45 days, which Sharif's party has put in place to allow his brother to be elected to the National Assembly. His brother, if you know it, he is the Chief Minister of Punjab province, Shehbaz Sharif. So the political secession debate at this point is a little complex because the ruling PMLN has appointed the former Petroleum Minister, Shahid Raza, as the new interim Prime Minister for 45 days to facilitate plans laid out by the former Prime Minister Sharif to bring his younger brother, Shehbaz Sharif, current Chief Minister of Punjab province, as the new permanent candidate for the office of the Prime Minister to ensure the political survival of his dynasty. Personally, I hold the current, interim Prime Minister Abbasi in high regard because having considered the available options, because he is not only highly educated, he's a technocrat and also has decades of experience in running large-scale commercial ministries like the Ministry of Petroleum or the Pakistan International Airlines. So I would assume that he would be a trade-friendly leader if, and that's a big if, he gets to stay beyond the 45-day interim period set by his party to facilitate the election of Prime Minister's brother to the National Assembly and by polls.
Okay, so why do you say if I may ask? I mean, do you think the opposition might really stand a chance at entering into power in the forthcoming elections?
Look, it's all about the survival of the dynasty. And if we go back to the Panama Papers case, the Panama Papers case in this particular verdict, it is against the entire Sharif family. It is not just against the prime minister. His sons, both of his sons are involved. His daughter, who was his first option for, his secession plans, she is grossly involved. She has actually been accused of criminal activity, basically submitting fake documents, which is, again, being investigated. And we will find out over the next 6 months as the state prosecutor, proceeds with his plan. And if Abbasi survives or not, it depends on how the political party in place sees their footprint in the largest province, Punjab. If they want to lose that province and bring the chief minister from Punjab to Islamabad and, make him the prime minister, which is, technically possible through by election, it is also possible, and it could be, it could pose a danger to the dynasty's survival that they will lose the biggest province and they will also lose the center in next election. So it is all about the survival of the dynasty. So if the current prime minister gets to stay beyond 45 days or not, it has everything to do with the survival of Sharif's dynasty. This person in place right now, he is considered to be a Sharif loyalist, but he is not a Sharif. He's not from the family. Another person who's being prosecuted at this point, the former finance minister, Ishaq Dar, he's also a close relative of the Sharifs. So it is about the dynasty's survival, and if this individual is allowed to carry out his job beyond 45 days, it will be an interesting episode, and we'll all be watching it very closely.
All right, Shahid, thank you very much for that. This was a very unique perspective, particularly in how you touched upon the Sharif dynasty and the upcoming court proceedings against them. Thanks for sharing that.
TrendStorm.
Now, folks, if we think back on what Tayyip and Shahid both share with us, we can see that this move, it wasn't a regime change in a negative way. It was more along the lines of justice finally being served to a corrupt politician, as I wrote in the lead-in. And, folks, that this has really been a polarizing issue abroad, but inside Pakistan, there's a lot of support behind the courts. And it seems as though people are very happy with what happened and that the situation is finally stabilized. It's not destabilized like those outside of Pakistan might speculate, but after speaking to two Pakistanis, very distinguished ones at that, we can come to the conclusion that this was definitely a step in the right direction. So folks, if you want to sound off and share what you think about this, please send us an email at radio@sputniknews.com or find us on Facebook. Stay with us.